Now, Reggie, in Corinth, there seem to be a lot of partisan divisions going on. You've got people saying, I'm of Cephas, I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, and then, some other people are like, oh, I'm of Jesus. How would you compare what's going on in Corinth with, say, like modern denominationalism? Or is there even a connection?
Well, there probably is a connection, Graham. When we were talking about Galatians, we were talking about a group of people who had what we called an under-realized eschatology. Mm-hmm. And part of that meant for those folks, they didn't have a sense of the security of their salvation. They weren't sure that the work of Christ on the cross had done enough. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that was really apparent to Paul was that their sense of belonging was threatened as well. Mm-hmm. There was the question of, which Jerusalem should you have loyalty to, and are you really in the family of God? And part of what Paul did with them to bring them into a more realized sense of eschatology is, you know what, guys? You're part of the family. Don't worry about it. The Israel of God, you're already there. There's a place for you at the table. Now, the situation is really different in Corinth because these people think that they are king's kids. They think that they have arrived. They think that the portals of heaven have been opened up and all the spiritual blessings have been poured out on them. And so they've got the tongues, they got the word of knowledge, they got the prophecy, they got the power stuff going on. And what has happened is that they, in the aggregate in Corinth, think that like we're it. We have got this special revelation from God. We got it going. And because they're still sinful and in their flesh, they're going like, but you and I got a little bit more than like Rob over here.
That's right.
And so
Wait.
Don't interrupt because we got this thing going. Okay. And so there's their sense of having arrived, of being king's kids, of being like rich spiritually at everybody else's expense, winds up being not just about, well, we Corinthians are so special, but we have these little subgroups in Corinth that are very special. And part of what Paul is doing in this whole letter is reminding them, you Corinthians are no more special than everybody else in the church. So he makes a point of uniting them with all the saints outside of Corinth. And that's it's a great lesson for us because what has happened over time in the history of the church is denominations have formed. Often it's political. Mm-hmm. Often it's people just not being able to get along. Often it's over substantive matters of interpretation about what's really important in Christian doctrine. Mm-hmm. And often those denominational divides are very important to preserve particular doctrines that need to be argued for and articulated well. But what can happen is the same over-realized sense of we are the special people who see things that other people don't. And I think what Paul would invite us to, as he invites the Corinthians, is to not say, well, whatever our denominational equivalent would be, I'm of Paul. And, some denominations do ironically get more of their bearings from Paul's writings. Or I'm of Peter. Well, it so happens there are some denominations that pay kind of more attention to Peter and the gospel tradition and the gospels that we think were written by Peter or at his behest. Then other groups are kind of like, well, I'm of John, and have kind of a more mystical sense of Christianity. And what's really interesting is that like each of those corporate expressions does have a certain embodiment of Christian truth that's really kind of very special. But when they become these little cliques that aren't aware of the rest of the body of Christ, much less appreciative of how dependent we all are on each other, it gets to be really quite ugly. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that we can learn about how to be faithful to the denominational heritage that has shaped us, and how to preserve the good that's in it, but also how to be charitable towards other Christian expressions where other doctrines or other practices are more elevated over our own, and to realize that we're all part of a large house, the body of Christ, the church worldwide.